All right, everyone, we're going to try something new right now because of these crazy times we're now all facing. And this new thing is for me to interview one of my very favorite clients, Brooks Scott, who's an executive coach. And I'm very excited to share the work that Brooks and I have been doing because it coincides with this huge disruption and everything that's going on with COVID-19 and everything like that. And with public speakers canceling gigs, getting their gigs canceled, all of that stuff. Brooks' story is not only significant around the kind of hardship that public speakers are suddenly facing, but it also speaks to what's possible and how we can pivot your message. So you're not changing your message. If you know my work, you know all about this silver bullet concept that I teach people. And in terms of how we can respond to this disruption and make sure we're still attracting people to our stuff, and still speaking to the way people are needing to solve the problems that we already helped them to solve, how do you actually pivot that without changing your whole message, but just helping your audience in a slightly different way and attract people more and more and more? Because people are desperate for our help. And so what we talk about today, what Brooks and I talk about today, is going to help with that. Brooks, it's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, man.
Awesome. Yeah. No, thanks for having me,
for being here.
You're very welcome, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get the chance to talk to you again.
Yeah. We have so much fun on our calls too, don't we? We just have a great time, and we're both in California, and we don't have to do any awkward time zone math, and so we're just having good times, aren't we?
Yeah. No, it's always great. I always look forward to these, man. I really do.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'm really happy for everyone to hear your story and how we are working on your messaging and your content so as to help you to get out there in this new and different way. And also so that people can learn a bit from you because you have so much to share with people as a whole.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to share, man.
Beautiful. All right, man. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually start with your story, not in terms of what you do day to day, but the specific event that called you to get the Silver Bullet program from me originally and then decide to actually work with me one-on-one. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the event that you were planning to do and some of the details around that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I had this idea of maybe it was like around Christmas time. I was traveling back home to Jersey for a little bit to see my family, and one of the things that keeps coming up for companies I'm talking to, they all want to know, do you have some video of you speaking or of you teaching? And although I teach and go to these companies all the time, I can't bring in like a film crew with me to film me kind of teaching, right? Because it's all kind of in-house, in-person conversations at these companies. So I'm like, how am I going to get some video of me speaking on stage? So I had this idea of throwing a launch party for my executive coaching business, and getting all of my friends and my family and my loved ones together, all in one space to kind of just celebrate together. And then in that celebration, I play bass guitar in a band. So my band was going to jam, and I was going to be on stage and I was going to talk about something. And the something ended up being values, because the values work is coming up a lot in my coaching work. So I was going to be on stage and give like a TED style talk, and then film that. And then now I have the content and videos for my website, and I can bring these into companies. So when they're like, hey, are you a legit public speaker? You actually teach things? I'm like, yeah, actually I do. And here's some proof of that. So that's where that whole concept came from.
Right. And so let's just take a moment, everyone, to recognize how proactive Brooks is that he didn't even just do this. He didn't go small. You're going to have like 300 people in the room.
Yeah, 300. Right? So the space fits 250, but I'm like, I can squeeze in a couple extra 50 in there. So
yeah, why not, right?
I had an invitation. I mean, bro, this was like planning a wedding, man.
Yeah.
I had a videographer. I had a DJ. My band was going to play. So yeah, whenever I do things, I usually try to go all out and do them the right way.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And it also, the extent to which you planned and went all out for this event leads us very cleanly into the next question with what happened next. I think everyone can guess that.
Yeah. So, oh man, it was tough, man. I had some friends from college, and my college roommates were coming in. A bunch of customers that I've been talking to over the last couple months were all coming. So everything was set, and because of this whole COVID-19 situation, had to make the tough call to put it on, to postpone it, to put it on hold. So I actually made the call well before I would have had to have put it on
Right.
hold with all the restrictions that came out.
Right.
I just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I really wanted people to celebrate and have fun with this event. So yeah, I had to postpone it indefinitely. So I don't have a date when I'm going to do it. So yeah,
Right. And unfortunately, none of us do have dates. I was talking to someone just this week about a speaking gig that's happening in August, and she asked me if I'm still in. I'm like, of course I'm still in if people are having speaking gigs in August, and we just
yeah,
don't even know yet.
yeah,
And so that winds up being a very important thing for us to remember, that we don't honestly know how these things are going to unfold, which can be very scary times.
yeah.
And so I do very much appreciate how even you were proactive both in creating the event and also proactive in postponing it, because you understood, and you mentioned values just a moment ago, which we'll get into more in a second, but your values didn't align with that. You wanted to make sure that people felt safe and taken care of. And so I do want to make sure I explicitly commend you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Of course. Of course. All right. So that was the event. And like with everything, everything got canceled or postponed or however we phrase it. And what you work with these various companies, can you tell us a little bit about what you do? You do executive coaching,
Yeah.
and you're helping executives to do certain things. Actually, let's talk about it, and I'll feed you this because obviously I work with you. We were talking about your work and your talk in the context of helping executives to make better decisions.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Right. So can you tell me a little bit about what kinds of problems in that realm, like how when you coach people with your executive coaching, what kind of problems you help them to solve in that regard?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, one of the main problems that keeps coming up, it's like, executives and just people in general are always faced with really difficult decisions. Speaking
Yes.
about specifically in the workplace, how do I know if this is the right person to hire? How do I know if this is the right person I'm supposed to fire? Just kind of making all of those decisions on a day-to-day basis can be very daunting for a lot of managers and executives. So yeah, so what I do, those things come up a lot. It's like we're faced with, we need to make a decision to do X, and how do I make that decision? How do I have confidence behind the decision that I'm making, and
Mm,
also confidence behind fixing the decision if I did make a mistake in making that? Like, how do I figure out those things? Those are a lot of the topics that I'm working with.
right. Right. Yeah. And it's incredibly important because the decisions that the leaders of a company make can make or break what happens. The very famous example, I believe, from back in the 70s was when Kodak invented the digital camera and then decided to hide it from the marketplace
Yeah,
instead of leveraging it and giving it everything it had to make sure that it came to market in a fruitful way. And of course, Kodak, they went the way of the dodo, essentially, in the
right.
corporate sense. And so you're there to help them to solve the problems. And the work that we did in working out the speech that you were going to give in front of these few hundred people steered us toward talking about what as the way to help executives make decisions. What winds up then becoming the basis of how you help these executives and other people in doing the better work.
Yeah, it's all about the values, all
Right.
about values and personal values, company values. What happens a lot of times, I come to executive teams, and they're talking about the problems and the challenges, and I'm like, you know, have you done your company values? And half of them say, I wouldn't say half, maybe a third of them have their values done. A
Yeah.
third of them have never done their values at all, and then the other third has some values that are just really bad. So it kind of runs across the gamut of those.
Right. Of course. And so you have the values, either your values are poor and then you make really poor decisions and then nobody wins kind of thing, or if you get clear on your values and you make your decisions based on those values, then of course you're going to take your company into bigger and better places.
Yes.
And that winds up being your solution. But as we both know, when working out your silver bullet, it wasn't just to simply say values,
Mhm.
right? Like, could you tell us let's have some fun with this. There's a story that we intend for you to tell around the brushing of your teeth, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so could you tell us a little bit about what this goes back years ago and all of that, but you could you tell us the brushing the teeth story?
Yeah, yeah. So I had this, and my friends would always laugh because they're always like, Brooks, you're always doing something crazy that makes no sense. Like, why are you wasting your time with this? So I had this idea where I wanted to find things in life that were uncomfortable and see if it was possible to make them comfortable. And
Right.
one of the things I wanted to do behind that was so I'm right-handed, and I started brushing my teeth with my left hand. So for those of you who think this is crazy and nonsense, I want you to try doing that tonight and
Right.
see
Right. Right. Right.
how it goes, right? So
Yes.
yeah, brushing my teeth with my left hand to see if I could get to the point where it's as comfortable as my right, and even more so than that, if I can just not even have to think about it. Like I just walk into the bathroom and I just end up starting to do it without even thinking, where it just becomes natural that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what we then learn from that is that one of your values is what exactly?
Yeah, making things that are uncomfortable comfortable.
And then, everyone, so you know, I know Brooks' story because we work together on his content very intimately. So I'm really just feeding him exactly what I want you all to hear next.
Yeah.
And so, what's an example of you taking action as a reflection of that particular value, making a decision
Yeah.
about what to do with your life moving forward?
Yeah, so I'm from New Jersey originally. I live in California. I've been here for about 6 years, but in my past life, I was a New Jersey state trooper for almost 10 years. And one of the things that really attracted me to that position was that right around 1998, 1999, there was this huge racial profiling incidents that were happening within the state police.
Right.
And in a state as racially diverse as New Jersey is, there were not that many Black troopers who were being enlisted.
Hmm.
So I've always been the type of person, like if I see something that I don't like or something I want to fix, like I jump in there and I fix it myself. I don't just like point the finger and wait for other people to do that. Uh,
Right.
so yeah, that was, I mean, clearly like a very uncomfortable situation to purposely put yourself in. Like what, like who would, other people were like, why don't you become a California Highway Patrol officer, or do you want to be like a local cop? And I didn't want to be a police officer anywhere else
Right.
except New Jersey
For the
specifically.
state of New Jersey. Right.
I wanted to get in there and fix that. Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. And so then if we look at that in a corporate setting, an executive, if they had your values, they would be thinking about how one of their values is making the uncomfortable comfortable. And so they might make certain decisions about how to move the company into a more uncomfortable context and make it more comfortable for them and everyone else, and then grow their market share or some other desirable corporate outcome. Does that sound about right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes like innovation is all about doing things that are uncomfortable. We're thinking of and creating a new idea that hasn't been tested yet.
Right.
That's an uncomfortable space to be in. So yeah, if that was a company value, that's how it would show up.
Exactly. And so to make sure that we keep things moving, I'm just going to share with everyone what this ultimately amounts to in terms of the silver bullet, with your indulgence, Brooks, of
Yeah.
course. And so what the point that you make, and as we were working out, is that how most people feel that values are a noun, like innovation,
Yeah.
right? But what you teach them is what? That values are actually a what?
Yeah, values are actions. They're verbs. They're actually five things when we do those things. They have to be simple, clear, concise, bold, and actionable.
And actionable, exactly. Right. And so you have all of these things to define your values, and then we can circle back to the toothbrush story to show how that to make that values will foster your clarity, as a leader, like to make those kind of decisions, when they commit themselves to an action they can take every day. You start with the toothbrush, you graduate up to the state trooper thing, and then you not only understand your value, but you've made it part of yourself. And so companies could then start small with things they could do every day and integrate their values, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all about those little things that we can do. You know, oftentimes people think that, you know, we're on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best and 1 being the least. If we're at a 2, we think we got to be at a 7 by Friday. It doesn't
Right,
work like that. We look for the 2 to the 2.3 to the 2.7. We gradually
right.
work our way up, and that's a great way to look at values. Like, what is a small action that I can take in every step of my being every single day that can lead to those harder and larger actions and decisions.
Beautiful. So as a side note, everyone, even though we're here to talk about pivoting of message, I do want to take a moment to recognize the value that Brooks is bringing to the conversation as an expert in all of this, that if you're looking to make better decisions in your company or in your work as a whole, then starting off going from a 2 to a 2.3, doing this more incremental work like the toothbrush is a small thing that you could do every day. You could start to get clearer and more integrated with your values in that way. And of course, the main point of our conversation is to talk more about the pivoting of one's message, because everything we were working on for this TED style talk was for this live event. And now the landscape has changed. Not only are we doing virtual presentations and stuff, but people's pain, the problems that they're facing are very different. The emotional tone of business and the marketplace is very different. And so what I really want everyone to recognize is that, and we will illustrate this through the work that Brooks and I are doing together, this is not a matter of changing your silver bullet. It's not changing everything that you do fundamentally. The value of a silver bullet and having a clear message at the core of what you do is that you can pivot to a shift in the marketplace, still be true to what your expertise is and what you're here to help people to do, but it's framing it in a different context. Okay? Your ability to pivot ultimately comes down to the clarity you have in the message that lies underneath it all. All right? So, Brooks, let's talk a little bit about our most recent conversation. Basically, I believe it was our first conversation since this all went down,
Yeah.
right? And doing this work together. And while we were talking previously about executives making decisions, and decisions are of course a top of mind thing for certain people and whatnot, and that might still be some valuable messaging in terms of the broader scope of the fear and the panic and all the things that people are freaked out about, the tanking stock market and all of that. Let's talk a little bit about a different problem that this conversation around values can still actually help people to solve.
Yeah.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about it around actually, why don't we just start with your take on the cliche that every cloud is a silver lining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that a couple things behind that statement, and it always made me pause whenever I would hear somebody say that, and I've been thinking about this for a while. So a couple things with the clouds with the silver linings. So one, clouds with silver linings are the type of clouds that happen to you,
Right.
right? You don't have any control over that, and also that statement also implies that like every cloud is a cloud that is bad. It is negative. Every cloud has a silver
Right.
lining. But you know, we also know those clouds that are bright, white, fluffy, that we want to see out on those sunny days, right? So what I do and what I say and what I write about is yeah, every cloud has its silver lining, but it should go deeper than that. And the
Right.
deeper one is like, I don't look for silver linings in clouds. I really don't. I just look for ways to build better clouds. And
Right.
that's kind of understanding behind that I have.
And so the difference between finding the silver lining, which is reactive, oh, these bad clouds are happening, oh, let me find the silver lining, and what you're proposing is to instead be proactive.
Yeah, being proactive and not only being proactive, but also taking action to build those better clouds.
Right, right. It's that action again. And so if we were to look at this concept, this is again something that Brooks only just introduced to me last week, and I was very happy to hear about this because it's such an interesting, because I love pushing back on cliches myself as in general, as a general way to show up in the world. And so what we then came to understand through that conversation is that the problem that we could then speak to with your work is feeling a lack of control
Mm.
in this huge shift that suddenly happened. That this thing has happened and we could be feeling like victims, we could be feeling completely overwhelmed. And instead of trying to find that silver lining, we can build a different cloud, which means what in practical terms? How would a person who's suddenly dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic and all the things in the marketplace that are going on, what would be an example of something that they could do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. I mean, I think it all comes down to what are those things that you have valued in your life that you have been putting off for a long time. So I hear from a lot of people I'm working. There's a lot of personal things that are coming up from my clients now, not just work things. So one of the things is like, I mean, think how many people have been dying to spend more time with their kids, or their
Right.
wife, or their husband. So now a lot of people have that time now, and are we taking advantage of that? Or, I mean, it could cleaning out the shed. I mean, it could be anything, but whatever, like, are there some values that are attached behind those things that you've wanted to do for a long time, but you haven't? So making the decision to do those things, and then making the decision to continue doing those things when we come out of this, that's what values are.
Right. And so your ability to take control of your life will be defined by how well you understand your values. And you will feel that much more grounded and that much more empowered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like it's like, don't just excuse me, don't just start spending time with your kids because you have to, or
Right.
spending time with your loved ones. Like, do it because you want to, if that's something that you value. Don't like repaint the bedroom now just because you're stuck at home. Like, do this because like one of your values is like, yeah, I want to have a comfortable, enjoyable, and personal environment around me. And so
Right.
that's why we're
Right.
doing things now, not because the silver lining has forced us to be able to do it.
Right. So the value ends up being something like enjoying the comfort and nurturing qualities of my surroundings. And
Yeah,
that's action that you might take, which defines your value and therefore gives you that much more clarity as to how to respond to this situation in a more proactive sense instead of just finding that silver lining. And so again, it winds up being finding that small thing that you could do. You could take from a 2 to a 2.3 and from a 2.3 to 2.7. And so you ground yourself, you relieve yourself of the feeling of overwhelm by finding that small action that you can commit to every day that will then define your values that much more prominently, right?
yes, exactly. And then when we are through all of this, that is something that can stay with you through your being. I mean, I say this a lot of times to my clients too, like, your values have to be in every step, from the way that you're walking down the hallway at work, to the way that you're talking to the person at the grocery store who's bagging your groceries, to the way that you're talking to your spouse. Like, that is how deep your values should be ingrained in what you're doing.
Yeah. And therefore, with that depth of integration, you are then that much more present and that much more centered and that therefore much less overwhelmed by everything that's going on. And
Yes.
wouldn't it be a treat to show up in response to all this uncertainty with that kind of presence and groundedness?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it relieves stress. It creates better relationships for people. I mean, it
Right,
is a huge part of what I think a lot of people are missing in their lives right now.
right, absolutely. So I want to be very explicit with this. What we have with Brooks is an underlying silver bullet to commit yourself to the actions that define those values every day, right? Like your values will define your presence and well, let me try this again because we never really got right to the point where we are explicitly restating the silver bullet. But your value, let's just try this off the cuff right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Your values will serve you in times of uncertainty when you commit yourself to an action you can take every day.
Yeah.
something like, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're basically doing here, everyone, is taking that same basic idea and adapting it, not to executives trying to make decisions, which is still relevant on some level, but to a much wider, potentially a wider audience, or maybe even just the same audience that Brooks was already serving, to talk about the feelings of overwhelm, the feelings of everything is happening to us now, this sense that everything is crashing down around us and we don't know what to do and we're uncertain about everything. All of these things that are weighing down, that feeling that things aren't working out, this winds up being a way that Brooks can pivot the same exact message and the same methodology to a fundamentally different problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right?
Neil, and let me just say too, when this launch party happens, it's probably going to be around the time where we're all just able to start getting back together in large groups, right?
Right.
So people aren't going to want to talk about executives and how hard it is for them to make decisions. They're
Right.
going to want to talk about the emotional side of what we've all been through together, right? During times of hardship, how are we healing from this? What did we learn from this? How
Right.
different decisions from this now? So it's very
Right.
important to switch to a different to pivot now.
Absolutely. And that's an amazingly important point to make, Brooks. And thank you for doing so, because right now we're dealing with how do we respond to this crisis? And then in however many months, it'll be how do we build back up our lives together?
Yeah.
And the kind of decisions you make in building and the kind of building that you do will again be defined by the values you have and how you can commit to those values every day.
Absolutely.
So the message is the same throughout, but what you're doing is adapting that message to what's going on in the moment. And you will have continually powerful content and continue to attract people to it because of that underlying clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I loved working with you on this silver bullet and kind of seeing how this can adapt, because this has already changed from my talk, and maybe I'm going to be bringing this into another company who has a different focus. But
Right.
the value is the values are the strand, the thread that goes through all of these things, right? But I can take this and adapt it for the specific audience, or for the specific set of circumstances that are happening in the company or in the world as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'm very excited for everyone to hear your story in this regard. We've covered, of course, where you at before the whole scare took place, before the whole pandemic, and then how we have already taken steps to adapt your message to respond, and of course, how that's going to even take shape in the months to come as the conversation around all of this changes yet again. So I'm really grateful for your time today. Can you tell us quickly where people can find you if they want to learn more about your work?
Yeah. So my website is mergingpath.com. My name is Brooks E. Scott. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I do a bunch of managing unconscious bias programs and crucial conversations and all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you need some help.
Beautiful. Well, absolutely wonderful that they can continue to connect with you as they see value in doing so. And of course, if you want to find me, you can find me at neilcanhelp.com. And I have a cool speaker quiz that you could take and start getting better on your messaging yourself and everything like that. neilcanhelp.com. Brooks, it's been so much fun talking with you, dude. And I am just thrilled that we're doing the work we're doing.
Yeah, awesome, man. No, thank you, man. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it, man. Always happy to help, man.
Beautiful.